this week. The first question was for the Baltimore carryout study, which characteristics place the Baltimore carryout target audience as an at-risk community for poor nutrition? So, who wants to go first?
I can go first.
I'll go first. So one of the things that I noticed is that 31% in Baltimore City don't have access to a car. And that affects food security, that affects job, that affects poverty. So that was a really shocking statistic when I was researching this. Mm-hmm. So that geographical or social isolation, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, and going along with statistics, also 35% were obese. So that obviously shows that they have poor nutrition as well.
Mm-hmm. It's also like an urban area, so that could be another factor that contributes to how many like Baltimore carryouts are there. So I said that could be a factor too.
I think that the food environment played a part. So being as though the food environment is pretty important, the individuals eating, food availability and accessibility and affordability played big parts.
Mm-hmm. And anyone else? Anything?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at data from 2011, so it's not perfectly up to date, but there was one statistic that I saw that the USDA, or the population living in a USDA-defined food desert in Baltimore City was 51.55%, which is another thing that I just found incredibly shocking as I was writing this homework assignment up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And sorry.
No, I looked into a different study that was done in Harlem, New York, which it's called the Childhood Obesity and Neighborhood Food Store Availability in Inner City Community. And it shows that 55% of the surveyed blocks in Harlem had a convenience store or like a carry-out store on the block, and that the children who they surveyed age ranged from 1 to 6, and sorry, I'm just reading my notes. 85% of them were likely to be in the top percentile to be obese. So I thought that was wild. Like 85% is a very, very large number. Also, Harlem, I feel, is a little more New York's, I mean, obviously more populated than Baltimore, so I'm not sure if that makes a difference, but.
It's convenient, if that's what you want to call it. That's why everything is just, I think it's all about convenience and accessibility. So in Harlem, you do a lot of walking, and I think these carry-out foods or places are just making items that are fast, and things that are fast aren't really that healthy. So that's probably why we're not taking into consideration that none of these foods are benefiting anybody as far as health. So of course, I guess the area is suggested to be becoming obese.
Yeah, and also at convenience places, like even if you go to just like Rite Aid or CVS, like everything is so significantly more expensive just for the same convenience foods. It's less nutritious and like more expensive. So
yeah, carryout foods have like overall low nutritional content. Mm-hmm. And that kind of goes with number 2, why high consumption is associated with poor nutrition and unfavorable health consequences, and just because of the nutritional content in those foods, I think. Sorry. So for number 3, they also asked what features made it an example of a successful public health intervention. So does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think the relationship that the rapport that they built with store owners was pretty important. It played a large part in their intervention, and I also read that that they suggested that for future interventions and for previous interventions, if you didn't build a good relationship with the store owners, the intervention was less likely to succeed. And so we wanted to get the thoughts and I guess how the store owners personally felt. So you needed a better understanding of the store owner's motivation and those and what strategies I guess would have been feasible. So I thought that was pretty important.
Yeah, I was really impressed that they did focus groups with the community and then also the store owners. And then to offset the cost to make it easier for the owners to swallow, they gave that money for an incentive. So even if the yogurt didn't sell well, the store owner wasn't going to lose money on just trialing that alternate side. So I think that was a really good part of the study as a whole and makes it more replicatable but less sustainable, because it's going to be hard for other organizations to try to find funding for those types of incentives.
That just they did 3 phases. So like stage 1 was like where they build their relationship, and then stage 2 was they developed the intervention strategies and they like included the customers and the owners in that. And then stage 3 was like actually implementing it to see like its success, and they offered like mini grants. I think that was this one, and like gave them like a fryer, or not a fryer, like they gave them like a new grill. So I think everything like that went into its success.
Yeah.
And what else? I also like how they did taste tests too, and that kind of also helped because it kind of gave the customers input too in the study. So I thought that was also a good part of it as well that helped make it successful too.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, I think I was on mute before. Because I kept trying to talk, but I guess I was on mute, so. All right, I'm here now.
Do you have anything to say since you
I think
were
the other
on
thing
mute?
was all the marketing materials to really highlight those healthy options, because it seemed like some of the carryouts actually already had healthy options to begin with, like some of the salads and some of the preparation methods, but people didn't know. And if you don't know, of course you can't purchase it. So I liked that component of this as well.
And with the marketing techniques, they said like add like a green leafy vegetable next to the ones that were like good. And I thought it was interesting because in the study it said 65.3% of customers purchased a food item due to a photo of the food on the menu. So I thought that was smart.
Yeah, and also with like it said that they would think of ways that like the customers would view the words that they were using in labels. Like it said they would use words like fresh instead of healthy. And I just thought that was really smart just because they were kind of keeping their audience in mind.
I agree. They also said they put their healthier options near the cash register, so that I guess so that it'd be more visible to the customers.
Yeah.
I thought that was smart too.
Yeah, and I also just thought overall, like, they kept everything, like, pretty familiar. They didn't go in and, like, revamp, like, everything. They kind of worked with what they already had and added a few things and, structured a few recipes, but they didn't go in and make it, like, a whole different scene that the community wouldn't be used to.
Yeah, I think it was smart that they got the opinions of the customers, because I think if they just threw in a bunch of different new healthy items that they weren't familiar with, then they wouldn't even be willing to try them. So.
Okay. And then for the fourth one, how might lessons learned from the Baltimore Healthy Carryouts be applied in other communities? And I said, well, like kind of having customers have a say in the intervention and other community members, I think that's important because it can really help make the intervention successful and get their input on it. So I thought that would be one way.
I found the Food Trust in Philadelphia actually has their own program where they go into convenience stores in Philly and kind of do the same thing. Take what the like small stores already have, and actually train the store owners and store like managers to promote the healthy products. They also have like stuff like low cost recipe cards placed next to certain items so that like customers can like buy those items, go home and make their own food with it. Also, the food trust supplied certain stores with like refrigeration and like specialty like shelving for actual like produce, which is uncommon in those stores. So yeah.
So I actually worked for the Food Trust for about 5 years on the Healthy Corner Store program. So one thought that I had is that refrigeration and giving equipment to stores is really tough because there's so much turnover. And I imagine it's the same in a pilot like this or a program like this, because there's just so much upkeep when you start giving materials and equipment. And that was one of the hardest parts at the Food Trust. You would give them all these things and then the store owner would turn over and then the new owner wasn't engaged. And then it's rebuilding that relationship over and over again.
And then number 5 is just if anybody found a similar intervention to the Baltimore study. We already mentioned a few of those, so if anybody else wants to add on to that or anything about this study.
I didn't find one that was.
Sorry.
No, you're okay. I didn't find one that was completely similar, but I did find one that just gave a community access to healthy food, and it was a mobile market in Memphis, and it was basically they revamped like an old public transportation bus and made it into like a mobile market that had access to like fruits and vegetables, and they had various different spots, and they actually had a lot of success, and they are still around after 5 years, which I just thought was really cool. And a big thing they focused on was nutrition education. They gave out a lot of pamphlets, and they played videos and stuff on the bus for like the customers, and they accepted SNAP benefits and stuff. So I just thought like that's a cool way, instead of having customers come to these places, having like these places go to the customers.
I read about something similar to the same intervention that we just read about, but it was in Montreal, and it was focused also on healthy menu options. And they gave out self-administered questionnaires, and they investigated basically how frequently a customer ordered health options or healthier options and their reactions to the interventions. And 20% of customers heard about the intervention prior to their current visit, and their intentions to eat healthier had improved. They also learned that previous studies were building a relationship with the store owners would be the most successful way to reach consumers through the intervention, which is something I just spoke about earlier. But the only difference between this intervention and the one that we just read about was that they didn't really do a good job building a relationship with the store owner. And due to that, they were unable to really learn the store owner's motivation and his personal strategies. And being as though they didn't consider his perspective, it was just crucial because the store owner was familiar with the community and the people that bought and came to the store. And when you try to come intervene and you're not familiar with the people that you get to engage with on a day-to-day basis, you kind of lose that touch and you're not personable anymore. So that was one of the reasons why it wasn't as successful as what we read about today.
I read about, it's not the exact same idea, but this study that's actually going on right now in Philly. A staff member at CHOP actually started it. They did a little research finding that like the rate of children that are eating out and like not eating home cooked meals anymore is like on the rise, and then that goes along with the rise of childhood obesity. So the study is testing an intervention that helps parents so they have to attend weekly cooking classes for 6 weeks, and then like surveyors will come in and do 24-hour recalls and try to get an idea of like the food that the kids are consuming. So they're trying to get away from fast food and focus more on home cooked meals. So I thought that was pretty cool since it's like in the area.
Another one in Philly is the Philadelphia Department of Public Health. So they partnered with Temple University's Center for Asian Health, and they've recruited over 200 Chinese food restaurants in Philadelphia. And they brought together a chef with all of these owners to help them figure out how to make the dishes that are familiar to the population a little bit healthier. And one interesting component is that they're not giving soy sauce packets away to anyone. You have to request them. So that's a very small way they can immediately cut how much sodium people are eating. There wasn't a lot of public data available, so I don't know how successful it's been, but it's interesting, and there's signs on the door. So if you're in Philly and you see one of the Chinese takeout restaurants with a little PDPH with this red and white sign, it means that they're part of this initiative.
I found a similar one to the Food Trust one in Philly, but it was in New York. And it was the Healthy Bodega Initiative. So like a bodega is just like a corner store. And they make up 80% of food stores in Brooklyn they started out by just selling low-fat milk. And from there, they moved into selling more fruits and vegetables after that was successful. I worked with 520 of them, and they provided marketing material. The health department provided marketing materials, assistance, training, and layouts for where to put the food, did the display, worked with the distributors and everything to get the fruits and vegetables. And they actually did outreach and education in schools and daycare centers as well. And in the end, 53% were stocking more fruits and vegetables. 46% started carrying more fruits and vegetables, and 32% reported more customers bought fruit, and 26 more bought vegetables. So I thought that was interesting and similar to the Food Trust Healthy Corner Store Initiative.
Well, from the International Journal of Behavioral Nutrition and Physical Activity, and it talked about this trial and analysis that was like a telephone-based intervention that was done with preschool children, and basically it was looking at the intake of non-core foods, so foods not in like the core groups nutrition groups that we know, and how to really reduce that among the children. And they kind of asked their parents, and they looked at the home food environment, so like where they have their food and how that kind of affects that. And they found that like short term, it was efficient in decreasing the intake at 2 months, but like when they measured it again at 6 months, it was not as efficient or sustained. But it was like for short term. So another study I found. So it's kind of similar. It's more about the home food environment. So. And I think that's it. Does anybody have anything else to add that they want to add to the studies? Well, no. Okay, so I think that's everything.
I do have a question though. What are we supposed to post in we're just posting our references, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're posting it by Sunday 9 p.m. Just the references used in the study. That's it. You're not posting the answers, I don't think.
Okay.